When it comes to teams known for choking, a few names often come to mind. For me, it's always been the Dallas Cowboys, Arsenal, the English national team, and Ferrari. But even with Ferrari currently pulling a Ferrari, I can't help but say McLaren is doing worse. With that said, I think McLaren is the new Ferrari.
Towards Vale now. Who's going to be last on the brakes? Leclerc has that inside line. Through goes Hamilton. Unbelievable stuff.
Now, some of you may argue with me and say, McLaren's doing a great job. I mean, look, they just had a 1-2 finish in Hungary. I would in turn say that Hungary was a prime example of McLaren pulling a Ferrari, as it was the most unprofessional, incompetent, and unsatisfying display of a 1-2 finish I've ever witnessed. I was genuinely uncomfortable watching McLaren beg Lando to switch positions with Oscar. With that said, in this video, I'll be going over every screw-up McLaren has made since they've had the fastest car from the Miami Grand Prix onward. In other words, how many wins have they thrown away in a 2022 Ferrari fashion? No! And how the championship would look if they were actually competent. Anyway, before you listen to me yap, let's make a game out of this, and comment down below how many points you think McLaren has thrown away, and if you think they can turn around after the summer break. Starting in Imola, McLaren screwed up Oscar Piastri's qualifying by not informing him of a K-mag behind, which caused him to receive a grid penalty for impeding. So, instead of McLaren's faster driver that week starting in P2 with Lando right behind in P3, Oscar instead started in 5th. The reason this matters is that Lando's race starts suck. They're not a relative strength of his, and at the very least, perhaps something could have been done to ensure that one of the two of them won by working together. Instead, Max won the race by less than a second due to Red Bull executing the race perfectly. Without this screw-up, Oscar could have won, which would have meant that the gap between Max and Lando would have been 56 points leaving Imola, and the constructors' gap would have been 97 points. On to Monaco. This race I'll skip over as, yeah, Oscar would have outqualified Leclerc by 0.07 of a second had his best sector times been strung together, but that would have been a really hard ask for anyone. However, for the sake of this hypothetical perfect McLaren team, let's just say Oscar wins at Monaco. Gap to Verstappen is now 52 points, and the constructors is down to 68 points. Canada is up next, and yet another failure for McLaren's pit wall as they threw away a second potential victory, as they failed to tell Lando to pit for a safety car if one happened to be deployed. So, instead of bailing on the last chicane, he continued on for another lap, losing P1 and ultimately the race. If that predetermined judgment had been made, the championship gap would have been down to 45 points for Lando and 51 for McLaren. More pain in Spain for McLaren. Yes, the rhyme was intentional, as Lando's race starts once again bit him in the you-know-what as he lost P1 on lap 1. However, he still should have won on pure pace, but he lost 1.3 seconds to Verstappen in the pits. With that 1.3 seconds back, he would have been able to overtake Max with DRS in the closing laps of the Grand Prix, or at least been very close, so without the Ferrari S choke again.
Stay out!
What
Tire, position 5.
The gap would have fallen down to 37 points for Lando and 41 for McLaren. Now, next up is Austria and the whole controversy of the wreck, which I briefly covered before, but all I'm going to say this time is that Lando should have won, but he didn't. He didn't keep a cool head, nor did he help himself, as he already had 3 track limit strikes going into that scrap with Max. I'll give this one to Lando, as he easily could have won in an ideal world, but even if not, Oscar should have been in 3rd to win the race following that incident had he not had his lap time deleted in qualifying the day prior. Going into their home Grand Prix, the gap should have been 31 points to Max and only 20 for McLaren, giving them a chance to take the lead in the Constructors' Championship. However, as we all know, McLaren threw this one away multiple times. It's almost like someone was playing F1 Manager and made it their life's mission to make sure Lando Norris and McLaren never succeed. Their first mistake happened around the transitionary period between a wet and dry track. Instead of double stacking Oscar and Lando, like Mercedes did with Lewis and George, they left Oscar out to dry and told him to continue on, which essentially took him out of contention immediately. Then Lando messed up in the second transition by pitting a lap later than Lewis and Max. However, that's not what lost him the race. They lost the race and second place to Max because they asked Lando if he wanted to cover Max with mediums or Lewis with softs. And for whatever reason, Lando chose softs. This is just comical to me because it's almost exactly how he lost in Sochi in 2021 because this pit wall kept asking him what he wanted to do instead of giving direct instructions like pit for hards now or pit whenever you want to for these tires, instead of asking him what tires they want. It's a problem that's plagued McLaren for a long time, going all the way back to Alonso's time there, which had some hilarious radio messages.
was going much slower than before. Amazing.
Winters or wets?
I think we should go to the garage. I don't know, mate. Put whatever tire you want.
Anyway, if they told Lando to use his medium tires, which were the best race tires that no one else had, he would have almost certainly won. Oscar put them on and was the fastest man on track for the last 10 laps. If Lando had won here, the championship gap would have been down to 21 points, and with that near guaranteed 1-2 finish, had they not screwed up Oscar's pit, they would have left their home race leading Red Bull by 8 points. Finally, in the whole Hungary fiasco, I imagine they would have inverted the cars to let Lando win instead of Oscar, as he would have only been 6 points behind Max with a win. Meanwhile, McLaren's gap to Red Bull would have been extended to 35 points. With Max taking an engine penalty in Spa, Lando would almost certainly be leading the championship heading into the summer break, and Red Bull would be panicking even more than they already are. I mean, Daniel or Yuki probably would have already stepped into the seat next to Max already. In conclusion, McLaren has thrown away around 70 constructors' points and 54 points for Lando. Now, I'm sure some of you may be thinking, that's not a lot, and I'm exaggerating with the number of points they squandered for the sake of this video. But let's compare it to how many points Red Bull would have lost in this hypothetical world. Red Bull would have lost 20 constructors' points, and Max would have lost a whopping 16 points. This means that, compared to Red Bull, McLaren is failing to get the maximum out of their car, while Red Bull is operationally superior in almost every aspect except the car. Which is just baffling to me, as this sport is nearly a century old, and I'm just appalled that out of all the teams and dynasties that could have watched to gain experience, such as Mercedes, Red Bull, Michael Schumacher's Ferrari, Classic Williams, or even their own glory days with Senna and Prost, which, mind you, succeeded with way more internal struggle, they chose to emulate 2022 Ferrari. No! That's it for the video. I'd like to thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and let me know if you'd like to see more content like this.